The Lifestyle Show, presented by Selena Mackenzie.
Now, I'm going to give a warning triangle here if you have some young children in the car. I don't know how much you want them to hear about our first guest, because Jamie Mustard was born into one of the most influential fringe movements of the 1970s. We're talking about Scientology. He was raised on a mythos of spaceships and made to believe that it was his life's purpose to help save the world. Well, he was determined to survive, and survive he did. He's since written a book called Child X, which is a dark journey into the deepest hole of human existence and the road back. I'm delighted to say that he joins us now. Welcome to the show, Jamie.
Hi, Selena. Thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome. So I want to start off, first of all, what exactly is Scientology then? Is it a religion?
I didn't find it to be a religious experience for me. It has beliefs that have a cosmology like another religion, you could say. But for me, on the day of my birth in the early 1970s, I was handed over to some people in naval paramilitary uniforms and taken to a small kind of slum tenement building on the outskirts of downtown Los Angeles, where there were maybe two caretakers for 30 or 40 babies. And that would begin the next 20 years of my life, which would be quite a crucible of animalization, medical neglect, psychological and physiological abuse, and I would say, and illiteracy. I didn't go to school. So for me, so you could say that there is an understanding of the universe and the origins of the universe with Scientology. But as I said, that was not a religious experience for me.
So do you have memories of that very early time being taken there?
I do have early memories of, just because the way the neglect was set up with 2 people to 40 babies, we would spend our days staring up at the ceiling in this slum, lying in our own sick, eyes crusted over, just the first 2.5 years of my life, little to no human touch. When I did my first interview to ever talk about it, because I've written other books and I've done other things, and I was never going to talk about it. I just had too much shame. And when I had done my first interview, where I'd even begun to even mention it a year and a half ago, or maybe a couple of years ago, one of the caretakers, a woman a girl who was 7 years old, who was in that slum nursery with me on the outskirts of downtown Los Angeles, contacted me, and I was able to verify with her what I remembered, and I was able to learn some things that I didn't remember. And one of them that I'd like to share, that I share in the book, is when they would bathe us, because they would only have 2 people to take care of all of these babies so their parents could be off saving the world in Hollywood. When they would bathe us, they would fill the tub full of water, and they would dip one baby and wipe him off, and then hand him to the other, they called them nannies, to put the diaper on. So in our weekly baths, after lying and staring and up at the ceiling all week in our own sick, then during our weekly baths, they would basically dip us in feces. Oh. And that was the level of care.
It's hard to believe. None of the authorities knew that this was happening? Nobody intervened?
No. I mean, I was even in the FBI raid in the late 70s, which was at the time the largest FBI raid in history, because the Scientology had committed the largest domestic spying operation on the U.S. government in history. And so they woke us up at midnight in these slum dorms. This time we'd moved to that big blue building. It wasn't blue yet, but it was that giant hospital that you see on television. Mm. And, moved us around all night from midnight or 11 or midnight till dawn, 6 o'clock in the morning, with FBI agents pouring in everywhere. And when I look back on that moment and what they found, there was a Holocaust survivor named Paulette Cooper who'd written a book called The Scandal of Scientology, and they'd framed her for bomb threats, and they lifted her fingerprints, and she was about to go to jail. This is a woman that had survived the Holocaust as a baby, and the only reason she was exonerated was because of that raid. But when I look back on it, and I talk about this in detail in the book, is the agents, nobody cared about all of these children that were obviously being kept up all night while they swarmed in the room, and they didn't bat an eye at us. And that is one of my, that's disappointing to me.
But why? Of course it is. But why did they not care? Presumably, you were the next generation of Scientologists, so it would be important for them to look after you, or did they not care until you were older?
It's such a great question, and one of the reasons why I'm talking to you is because this occurred on 4 continents over 40 years. And in southern England, central Florida, Los Angeles, California, and Copenhagen, and even some satellite places, Mexico City, Johannesburg, South Africa, all of these kids. And it's such a great question, because they kind of say, well, what would be the point in treating a child like that? And you have to understand that everything in Scientology is about production. My mother was about working. Hubbard said that production is the basis of morale, which is not true. Life balance is the basis of morale. But so everything is about working. So the idea was, we're going to take these kids over there and we're going to give them the minimum amount. And that, in our case, you almost have to look at us that they saw us almost as livestock. In the Scientology belief system, we are all trillion-year-old fallen gods that have lived millions and millions of lives, if not billions of lives. And we are stuck on a prison planet as Earth, in a meat body, which is a vessel of a prison. And everything in Scientology is to eventually return you to your godlike state. So we've had tons of lifetimes before where I've been my mother's husband or my mother's mother or father, and we've been educated millions of times, right? Mm-hmm. So the whole point is to keep these people working. And again, my mother, as a counselor, produced a lot of money for Scientology. So they wanted the kids off with the minimum amount, kind of like if you had a pig or a cow, you're not going to put it up in the Ritz-Carlton. You're going to give it the minimum amount that it needs. But in that case, it's an animal. We were human beings. You want to give it the minimum amount that it needs so you can grow it till it's 10 or 12 years old. And then it can be part of the labor force. It can serve as a vessel for labor. And that's not how they said it, but that is the mentality. That is how Scientologists think.
So were you put to work at an early age then?
I was. I probably signed my first billion-year contract when I was 5 years old, when I believed in the Sandman and Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. And again, I have an incredible life now. And the main reason, I wrote this book is it's getting to the point where we're all getting older, and I've survived in this incredible way. I overcame illiteracy, and I have this incredible life as an artist now, but I've just lost so many friends to suicide and drug addiction. And because of the neglect, so many of the kids were sexually abused, and I'm still losing them. And this story had never been told, with all the documentaries and Leah Remini show, all these incredible shows. This story of what happened to the inner Navy kids, the so-called Sea Org, had never been told. And I thought, if I don't tell it, it will go untold. And that's what I'd say. That's what Child X is about, the book that comes out in a week. And it's the first literary book on Scientology. It's written it's all true, but it's written in a novelesque form. I wanted what makes Child X different than any book ever been written is I want people to understand what it feels like to be raised like this, not just give you a series of things that happen. But to answer your question, Selena, and one of the first things they did when we moved to that giant hospital before it was blue, how you see it now on television, is they gave me this toxic gel. They wrapped me in this suit, adult hazmat suit. They gave me this toxic gel called naval jelly, which is used to clean rust off the sides of ships, and they put me in air vents all day with a respirator, cleaning out the old hospital air vents. And it started off feeling kind of like a kid adventure, but it ultimately, after doing it for weeks, it started to feel grueling and like slavery. But
sure.
I don't. And then the other thing that happened that is probably the worst thing that happened is not long after that project was done, they brought me up to the 7th floor, one of the higher floors of that blue building, and they had me with kitchen gloves ripping raw fiberglass at 9 years old out of the walls that they were going to reconstruct or put new drywall on. So I would, by the end of the day, every day, my entire 9-year-old body would be encased in fiberglass needles, including my throat and mouth. Oh. And I went home to no parents. At that point, there was 5 of us in a small slum studio apartment across from the building. Roach infested, mice infested, a level of developing country, worse than a developing country in terms of the squalor. And I would take these kind of searing baths at 11 o'clock at night to get the floating fiberglass needles to float out of my child body, and searing hot baths. And then I would get up the next day and do it all again.
Blimey. Why do you think people have been afraid to write about it or to make documentaries about it until now? And in that case, are you not afraid?
Oh, I mean, I don't know that I'm not afraid. I think that, Hubbard said anyone that would go against him has mandates and a whole, it's the only quasi-religious group in the world with its own secret police. It has a Stasi or a KGB, and their sole purpose is to destroy enemies. In the words of Hubbard, to ruin them utterly.
That was Ron Hubbard's the founder.
That was Ron Hubbard, the founder. He didn't like people. He didn't like enemies very much. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not looking forward to their retaliation. They have a couple $2 billion in cash, and they have an endless paycheck to try to ruin my life. But I'm very lucky. By April of next year, it'll have 6 books in the world. I've written a book on trauma. I've written a kid's book on resilience and overcoming the impossible. I've got 2 graphic novels coming out, and I'm very lucky to have very brave publishers that stand by me and have given me, I have a good support network around me. And at this point, it just has to be done. But the ultimate answer to your question, Selena, and it's such a great question, is shame. If you look at the early doctrines of science, some of the doctors of Scientology, emotion is frowned upon. So if you were a little kid and you hurt yourself, they would say knock off, or they would say stop the human emotion and reaction, what they call HENR. There's a lot of they see you in a 4-year-old body. Human emotion is frowned upon, and they see you in a 4-year-old body as an adult. They see you as an adult human, and they treat you as an adult because they really believe that this is your billionth lifetime, and all you need to do is just remember. So I didn't go to school my entire life. I could read at a high level at a young age studying the doctrine, but when I finally escaped, and that was my first escape at 19, 20 years old, I could not write. I didn't know how to use a comma. I couldn't make a sentence. And what makes my story unusual and why I'm speaking out is because after not being able to write as a 20-year-old man, not being able to use a comma, not chicken scratches, not knowing kindergarten math because I didn't go to school my whole life, 5 years later, I graduated from the London School of Economics, which is one of the finest educational institutions in the world. And now I do what I do now. And so so many of these kids that I grew up with, though, they're just crippled. They're crippled by autoimmune from the stress of the environment we were in, or they've hurt themselves and, with ideation and unaliving themselves, or they've died of drug addiction or alcohol abuse. And so I want to master my story, and I want to release the shame that I've carried for 50 years. I was never going to speak about it. I can't even believe that I'm here now talking to you.
Well, it is very much a comeback story. And you mentioned your first escape. So did you escape and go back and then escape again then?
I kind of did. I mean, and it's such a great question. When I finished college, you want a family. When you grow up in a bubble like that in these dormitories all over Hollywood, in these animalistic, abusive conditions. I mean, one of the things that happened to this building on Melrose, 4 blocks from Paramount Studios, is when a kid messed up, there would be an official naval order that would come down where they would order the parents to beat the child on stage. When I was 5 years old, they would strip these kids naked and beat them on stage. It was supposed to be a spanking. It wasn't, because the kid would go crazy. And we were so overwhelmed, Selena, not being able to believe our eyes at 4 or 5 years old, that we would laugh. And so the living conditions, I didn't have underwear. I didn't have bedding. I slept on a congealed mattress. I never learned to brush my teeth. It's very hard to communicate. This is really the inner Navy kids, the so-called Sea Org kids. It's very hard to communicate the level of deprivation and squalor, again, on over 40 years on 4 continents. And so when that's all you know, that's all your friends. I wanted my family. I wanted to know my friends. So after college, I went back to try to have a relationship with my mother and try to see my friends again. But it's impossible. You can't. There's always a third person in the relationship when it comes to Scientology.
Do you forgive your mother then, Jamie?
I do. I don't have a relationship with her. I haven't spoken to her in over 20 years because she has communicated. She's still involved with it. She's communicated very clearly what she thinks of me. And so no matter how much I want to love her or I want to have a relationship with her, she has communicated that I'm disposable, and she's communicated that for decades. So at some point, for me to overcome what I overcame to become who I am today, I had to let go of any sort of tie that had a reduced or what I would call a degraded view of me. I think that keep people in their lives, and this is any group, because of biology. They keep toxic people in their lives. And the reality is, I forgive her. I don't know her. I grew up in these dormitories. She came to visit me. I saw her here. There was a couple of years we lived in Oregon and I spent time with her, but I don't know her. I didn't grow up with her. I can count the amount of conversations I've had with her in my life on one hand.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's very sad. But escape you did. I just can't imagine how you even begin to heal from that sort of trauma, but it appears you have.
Well, I've done cognitive therapy, which a lot of, but the real healing that occurred in my life occurred through biological remediation of trauma. I was doing some work with the military, and I learned about a way to reset the nervous system. It was so transformational for me that I wrote a book with the doctor that invented this reset of the nervous system that the military probably is doing 30 to 40,000 of these procedures a year. Is their main line against post-traumatic stress. So post-traumatic stress is a biological injury. I wrote a book about it. But what I'm really here to do is to reveal the story of the lost generation of these kids in Scientology, which I call Child X. We are Child X's because our futures were marked from birth. Our lives were predetermined of who and what we would become before we were while we were in utero. We were turned over as vessels of labor. And so that's why it's called Child X. But I think to some degree, Selena, all of us can be Child X's. No matter, culturally, we can be a Child X, depending on what kind of family we grow up in and them determining our life without really us participating, can be a Child X. So on some level, I think anyone can relate to this book. So that's one of the early reviews that I've gotten. It's so extreme. And I have people that haven't had such an extreme experience seeing themselves in me.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I did not write a book for Scientologists or ex-Scientologists or people that were involved in Scientology. I wrote this book for people that have gone to the darkest place in humanity and think they really can't get back, and to show people that you can come back. And hopefully something in my story can help people to come back from wherever they are. And it's also just a harrowing, thrilling, incredibly cinematic, I hate to say it, but adventure story.
Well, the book is called Child X, as Jamie said, a memoir of slavery, poverty, celebrity, and Scientology. It gives a voice to the children that are still there. There are still children going through this. It's coming out on the 29th of July, and it's by the author, Jamie Mustard, who we're chatting to now. Jamie, if people want to find out a bit more about you or about your other books, do you have any sort of website?
Yes, I do. I mean, and also sometimes, people like to contact me to ask me about this trauma treatment. So one is, if you want to support this, I want to just say this one thing, Selena, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I think if people knew what children experienced in Scientology, especially the inner Navy kids, but all the kids that grow up with the particular indoctrination that I outline in this book, there would be they would have already stopped it. People do not like, and it's the hiding of this story that I think has truly allowed Scientology to continue. So if you want to help me, please help me get the story out. Please pre-order the book. To reach me and to talk to me, I talk to everybody. You can contact me on Instagram. That's where most people DM me, which is Jamie_Mustard at Jamie_Mustard. So JAMIE_MUSTARD. And then I'm an artist, and my artist website where I do high level design and art, and I'm a writer, is iconist.ltd. So iconist.ltd. But if you're interested in my story and you'd like to talk to me, I'd love to hear from you, and please contact me on Instagram.
Well, thank you for being so open and honest with us, Jamie. And thank you for getting up so early as well. I know it's quite early in the morning for you.
Your questions were incredible. And I really it was my honor. And thank you for letting me share this message with Europe.
Thanks, Jamie. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye.